Welcome to KIMEcast, where we break through and cut the BS in sports medicine, rehabilitation, and sports performance, and talk about how things really work. Welcome to KIMEcast. Tony Mikla, Evan Hauger, and we're here with Lauren Rigsbee.
Yep.
Lauren, welcome.
Thank you.
Lauren's a team member of ours, been with us for almost 4 years now, for quite a while, so it's been awesome. So we're changing it up a little bit tonight, bringing her in with, it's probably an upgrade, really, more than anything.
Honestly, yeah.
Yeah. So excited to have you. So Evan, what are we drinking tonight?
All right. I think we've had this one before, but we've got a Blind Pig from Russian River Brewing Company. I think it's going to be a little strong, so prepare yourself.
I think that was the case before you.
Yep, that's what I remember.
It's sad, though, and my only beer drinking experience happens to be on the podcast, so I can't even recollect other times.
That's been me too recently. So,
yeah.
Yep.
I don't know if that's
Life's
good or
changing.
bad. Yeah. Nonetheless, here we are. So, Lauren, welcome. So, to be here, you got to tell a little story about yourself, how you became a PT, why you want to become a PT, maybe what you've been through a little bit. I know you got some great stories and some great experience and some good background, so
Cool.
let them hear it.
Perfect. Well, I don't feel like my story of why I became a PT or how I chose to is like just I knew I wanted to do that and I went for it. It was a little bit more roundabout, I would say. I had some experience going to PT when I was younger, just like overuse throwing stuff that was very underwhelming.
Yeah.
Super traditional, not very memorable. Bands, hydrocollator pack,
Yeah.
ice pack,
Hydrocolators.
Yeah.
Right? Did I say that wrong?
Yeah, no, you got it.
Oh,
Yeah.
perfect.
Just haven't seen one in a while.
But really,
Throwback.
but that's what it was like. So I didn't even know my PT. I don't think I spent time with my PT at all, actually.
Oh, yeah?
So
More
that's
just the aide or the support person?
whoever. Yeah. I mean, I would go
Whoever
to
it
a
was.
building in the morning before school. I would get a heat pack, ultrasound, E-stim, and I'd leave. And I had my band at home. That's like it. So I don't know.
Could've been a
Anyway,
little bit
that's
more.
not the reason why I became a PT.
That sold you out.
That's not the reason why I became a PT. And then kind of moving forward, like going to college, I selected kinesiology. I couldn't tell you why. I liked science. I liked PE. I put the two together, and I'm like, this has got to be good.
Yeah.
So went to college with that. And then we had an athletic training staff that worked with our softball team, and I spent every day in there, kind of started learning from them and, kind of about my own injuries or whatever, like how I was feeling. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll do athletic training. Like, this is cool. I
Yeah,
really like it.
Totally.
And San Jose State has basically an athletic training program. All of my classes for kinesiology were athletic training based, and I could have easily just gone that direction. But I realized that like being on the road every weekend, even though it would be super awesome to be with the team and like continue that environment, wasn't really going to be like a long-term
Yeah.
Lifestyle
goal.
stuff.
Yeah, it's not what I wanted.
Yeah.
So I ultimately changed my mind and kind of fell into PT, really. I started volunteering and at a hometown physical therapy office, and I just really liked it. So
Yeah.
that's kind of why I became a PT.
What's not to like? I mean, I think it draws in so many people because it's a fun environment. It's like you're in a gym or you're in a fitness environment, hopefully like ours is, and you're active, you're able to move all day. It's probably one of the best decisions you can make for your own health in the world, is because you're up, standing around, working,
Right,
moving all
right,
day.
right.
There's lots of variability too, right? It's not
Yeah.
the same thing monotonously. Like each person
Right.
that comes in is pretty different.
Yeah.
So like every 30 minutes of your life is like restart
Yeah.
over again,
Super
Totally.
dynamic.
And the same person, the next time you see them could be different. So it's
Yeah.
just depending on even how they're feeling, their mood that day could be different. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's really cool.
Good story on you too, Lauren, from PT school. So Lauren and I went to PT school together at Sac State, and Aaron was also in our class. And I remember on the first day of PT school, Dr. McKeough asked the whole group, there's like 30 of us probably in our cohort, said, how many of you guys want to do sports medicine when you're done? And almost all 30 raised their hand. Remember this? Almost everybody raised their hand. He's like, that won't be the same in 3 years. And I'm like, yeah, right. And like, I don't know if it's the exact last day, but to make it a cool story, on the last day of PT school, he says the same thing. How many of you guys want to do sports medicine? And I think about 4 people raised their hand. Aaron and I and Lauren, and now and one other person. And now 3 of us all work in the same place. So that's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah. I didn't even know there was other options.
I didn't either. No. When I went into school, my mind was kind of blown when I had to do this inpatient hours but to get into school, and I went to volunteer there. I was like, this is PT?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I had the same experience. I think the minimum was like 20 hours, and I got that probably a little bit. Probably it was a little genuine was helpful for them to give me the 20 hours. I'm not sure I put it all in. We weren't allowed to touch anybody. It was straight volunteer,
generous,
Yeah, generous. That's the word. Goodness gracious, that's the word. But then I remember being in PT school and we started talking about wound care and like working with folks that have been in a coma or a stroke. And I'm like, what are we talking about? Like, what are we going to do in this situation? Come to find out, it's super cool.
it's really cool.
Yeah.
I was just ignorant to it.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, I was like, this is amazing.
no,
I really
for sure.
never thought that we could have an impact on these folks. So you really, it's to learn and see some amazing stuff, which I think does transfer all the way through to sports. As we all know with the nervous system, it's incredible, but cool. Well, Lauren, I know you've got some other cool stuff that you didn't even mention there that I think is pretty awesome. So, you played softball quite a bit growing up, ended up playing softball at San Jose State, which is fun. But Lauren had a very unique skill set of speed is the thing that you usually don't hold too calmly. Like, you're pretty proud of your,
She still does.
yeah.
We'll see tomorrow night at
Yeah,
slow
she's
pitch.
still, yeah.
We'll see how
The
it
speed
goes.
of the game has changed, but yours has not. Is that right?
I would say it has. I would say I used to be a lot faster than I am, but I haven't been timed in a while, so maybe we can make that happen. Yeah, no, actually, I didn't really know that my position existed in college until I got there.
Yeah.
Kind of like PT school, right? I don't know what just kind of happened.
Everything is going to happen.
I went from, well, I mean, like PT school, we didn't know like what
Yeah.
the profession had or whatever.
Sure,
But
yeah.
no, I was gonna play softball. I was
Yeah.
gonna play D1 softball in California. That was my
That
goal.
was so
I
sad.
had to. But no, I pinch ran in college, and
Yeah.
I wouldn't have chosen to do that, but it was my role on the team, so that's what I got to do, and I'm glad I did.
Yeah, I didn't know that was such a unique position really until you told me about it. You had it like all these years. I've always thought about it. I'm like, well, what position you play? She's like, a pinch ran. I'm like, that's sweet. We need to put somebody fast in, still second, still third. And let's get
It
her
was
slap better
stressful,
home.
though.
Let's do
It was you're successful or you're not. That's your one shot.
Yeah, that's it.
Your one shot in the game. That's
Yeah.
it. So you either had a great game or a really bad game. It
Yeah.
didn't matter.
Yeah, it's wild. Pretty cool though. So yeah, well, good luck tomorrow.
Thanks.
And see if we still have it. And just protect your hamstrings. Make sure you dynamic warm up and get loose.
Oh yeah, I've
all
got some
need
good
that.
PTs on the field
Yeah,
with me, so
we'll see how it goes.
they'll get me set up for what I need.
But then I think you have a cool equestrian background. You have horse,
I
at least
do.
one,
Yep, just one. I
One
have one
horse.
horse.
and you ride often still.
I try to, but it's ski season right now, so
Oh,
we're
that's priorities.
mostly
Either
priorities.
skis or horses, one or the other.
Yeah, one or the other. If it's sunny, horses, unless it's snowy. If it's good snow, then it has to be skiing, but
Yeah.
that's about to come to an end. So,
I know, we'll
yeah,
see.
horseback riding is definitely interesting. I think it teaches you a lot because you have to care for something else other than just yourself. I mean, you have to clean up after it. You have to feed it, like keep it alive. I mean, it's a pretty big deal.
Well, I think it's such a massive animal that's like so powerful. It's a lot to handle and control.
Yeah.
I mean, at your height, it's incredible at
I mean,
6'1", and that you can get on it so easily and all those things.
right. I mean, it's a working relationship with the animal. You're a team.
Right.
I mean, it comes down to like not necessarily just trying to control it. There's like trust and all of that
Yeah.
that you have to build. But
Right.
getting on it's not that hard. You have stirrups and they do hang down. So your mobility has to be there, but it's not that impressive.
I'm very inexperienced in this.
Yeah.
It would be
Yeah.
dangerous for sure. For me to be close to it for sure.
Yeah.
My only horse story, I used to like take care of like my neighbor's horses. They had 14 Clydesdales, right? So just massive animals.
Budweiser horses.
Yeah, Budweiser horses. It's kind of funny. So they were around the corner from me. Let's call it half a mile away. I was like in junior high. Saturday morning, I was supposed to go feed them. 7 a.m. was the thing. I fed them for on and off for 2 years, but it's only like I'd be like 2 weeks, and then I went to see them for 2 months, and then 2 weeks, right? So whatever. So anyways, my dad walks into my bedroom at like 8 in the morning. That Saturday, he's like, "Hey, are you supposed to start feeding the horses this week?" I'm like, "Oh, darn it, yeah, today's the first day." He's like, "Well, they're here." So we had like 4 Clydesdales in our front yard on the lawn. And I'm like, oh damn. So thank goodness he grew up on a farm and we were comfortable, and he's like, just go to the house and hopefully they'll follow you. So I did, so I ran to the place's house and they all ran back in, and they had broken down the gate and migrated a half mile to my front yard, having never been there. Never been there before. I never walked them, like never left it. So it was amazing. I think that they I don't know. They sensed it. I don't know what the heck.
I have no idea.
It was incredible.
crazy.
That
it
may
was
have
crazy.
just been happenstance. I have
May
no
have been.
idea.
We had a beautiful lawn. So maybe it was the only.
Very tasty one.
Maybe not
Yeah.
so beautiful once they got off of it.
Yeah, exactly. I had a lot of work to do there, but so nonetheless. So let's talk about what we got going on here. So we were going to talk. What are we going to talk about?
Posture.
Well,
Posture.
yeah,
Here I
so-
am, slouching.
I know all of us. It's
Yeah.
the end of the day. We're going to talk about kind of posture, or just how do you fix what you've been doing all day in only 30 minutes, and how unlikely that probably is. But also kind of how we're thinking about posture versus maybe the more traditional way of just
Yeah, which I think is huge, right? So we've talked about this idea. I mean, everybody has this idea that there's a perfect posture. I think certainly in the general population and even amongst practitioners, there's been this idea of good posture, and there's ergonomics, and there's great ways to sit, and there's great ways to stand, and there's all this equipment to get. There's just a huge industry around improving how well you sit. And though I think all that stuff is valuable and certainly has its place, I think we all kind of agree that maybe there's not a right way to sit. You know, I mean, let's start talking about that. Like, let's maybe not find the best way to sit, and let's move, right? And you just said it
Just
perfectly.
find variability, right?
Yeah, find some options. Evan was just saying that sitting or doing anything for 6 or 8 hours continuously is probably a bad idea. It doesn't matter if you're out running, or it doesn't matter if you're sitting or whatever you're doing.
Right. One of my favorite things that I've seen is just this depiction of posture, and it's talking about, it's showing a kid like in a chair, like in a classroom or something, and how the best way to sit is, or actually it says, what's the right way to sit? And the picture is just all different ways that this kid is sitting in a chair. I mean, like upside down, one leg off the edge, one leg up the back. I mean, any way that you can think of. And actually, I mean, it kind of makes sense. Like he's moving, or he or she's moving the whole time.
Yep.
Versus just sitting still.
And you see it in kids. I mean, right? Like kids, when they play, they're crawling, they're sitting on the ground. They wouldn't think to sit in a chair, you know. And if you go to many other countries, less developed maybe than America, like we developed this concept of build a high-rise building, let's build an office, let's build a desk, let's build a chair, and let's build a computer, and let's sit there and stare at it for 8 to 10 hours. Like that's not a real movement in the world. Like that's something we totally developed just in the last 60 years. I mean, hasn't been around that long.
Right, and I feel like maybe a company that has tried to combat that a little bit, I mean, at least I've heard, is like Google, where they have like all the different rooms and different ways that you can work, which kind of challenges maybe the societal norm or what you would expect from a workplace, because if you look at something like that, it might not look very professional, but it might be a lot healthier for your body, maybe even your mind, probably both.
I mean, for sure, all of those things, right? It's not just sitting at work, though, too. It's everything. Everything in our world is this. So, like, we drive like this. We sit rounded forward like this. You stand cooking like this. You sit on your phone like this. Everything we do is everything is
sleep
in front
like
of
this.
us. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people do, right? So everything
Yeah.
is this like rounded forward thing. And so, when people come in with maybe what you might deem a postural issue or a posture is contributing, your objective is really just to reverse that and help them reverse that. Like you said, you can't do it in 30 minutes. You can't. It's like the person that sits for 8 hours, does all that stuff for 8 hours, and goes and works out for an hour and wonders why they have a problem putting stuff over their heads, because all of life is this. You gotta go put something over your head. It's just not going to work. 30 minutes can't do it. You have to repetitively go back to that stuff. Even if it's like 30 seconds at a time, the more regularly you come back to it, the better. I think we know that it's been shown that your structure is going to be dictated by the positions you're in most of the time. So a great study that showed this has to do with horseback riding, actually. They were looking at IT band structure in runners compared to horseback riders. And in the runners, they found these really thick, robust IT bands. And in the horseback riders, they did not. They found a very thin, much more flimsy bit of tissue. Which, if you could think, like the horseback riders sitting there, like adducting their legs, right, squeezing into the horse to hang on. So a lot more pressure through a medial line, and the runner, every time one leg is on the ground, tons of stress through that lateral line, like we know. So you then put somebody sitting in this position, and their structure is literally going to be dictated around that unless we do something to change that.
I have a saying I use to people all the time. It's like, you're always training. So like change is inevitable, right? Every day you either get better or you get worse, and you get to choose. But you're constantly changing, you're constantly evolving, and you're constantly training yourself. You could either train yourself to be healthy and to be active and to be dynamic and to move, or you can train yourself to be really good at sitting, or really good at just standing still with your shoulders back and your neck pulled back. Like if that's what you want to be good at, that's certainly an option, right? So just
Right.
it's about input, right?
Right, and like that makes me kind of think, if you're sitting like this all the time, or you kind of say, hey, we need to work on your posture. I mean, the textbook version of work on your posture was kind of like this, right? Like
Yeah.
sit up tall, pull your shoulder blades back, but
Yep.
like what we're saying, dynamic posture, that's not the truth, or that's not what we want.
Yeah.
It's about reversing the things you're doing most of the time. So I think I did say this earlier too, but it's the gymnast or the sprinter that's in extension all the time. We're often figuring out how to help them flex a little bit better. The sitter or the person doing stuff in front of them all the time, we're figuring out how to help them kind of open up and extend. So it's very individual.
Right.
So we want to see people be able to move dynamically. So using tools for this. So we really like using the dynamic warm-up where we're moving in different planes. So maybe we're moving in what's called the sagittal plane, so you're bending forward or extending back. Maybe you're rotating both directions, and then you can move side to side in both directions and try to move those levels in a balanced way. I won't say equally, but in a balanced way where they're all able to do that. And if you have restrictions or you don't have the freedom of motion in a certain direction, then that's something to work on. And you're probably going to see that in both your dynamic posture as well as your static postures.
And I don't know if you guys see this at all, but I see a lot of people who really struggle in the frontal plane. Just
Right.
terribly, terribly hard for them. And that's one of my favorite things to work on with them, because you can find so much weakness there just because their body doesn't go
Yep.
there. It just doesn't go there. I mean,
Yeah,
you
they're
kind
never
of showed a
challenged,
full day, morning to evening, pretty much sagittal plane all day.
Yep.
Maybe rotational.
Yeah,
To,
when
like, back out of the
If you go to
driveway.
change lanes, but you don't even have to do that anymore because you got a little thing on your
Yeah.
mirror that blinks
Yeah.
at you
Yeah.
and if there's a car there. So
Yeah.
And to Tesla, you don't have to do that. You just lay back and take a nap, pretty much.
your whole life is literally set up for you to just go like this,
Right. and-
whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's just
So-
tunnel vision.
Yeah.
The fact that you say that, I mean, like, think of environment, like how much environment has changed. Like, this is not supported by evidence. I'm saying this. You guys can say if you agree.
Yeah.
I feel like most people are working inside now. I don't think there's as many people outside. That might be totally incorrect. But because of that, like, you're dealing within the confines of your environment. And,
Yeah.
when you go to work, most people, it's at a desk or something that's already there for you.
Yep.
It's not necessarily something you've set up in the way that works best for you. So
Sure.
all these people are trying to fit themselves into a normal mold, if you want to call it that.
Sure. And so the revolutionary ergonomic thing that people have been talking about for the last number of years is a standing desk. Like, oh, let's just stand up a little bit more.
Yep.
Like, okay.
Right.
I mean, great.
Certainly better than sitting.
Certainly better than
But
sitting.
again, it's that variability, right?
That's what it is. It's
Yeah.
just providing some variability. That's exactly it. And I would say that in this year, I've had a lot more questions about this stuff than normal times. I think people are maybe get more taken care of in their office job in normal times, and now everybody's at home. So now they're sitting on the couch, and now I've got a whole new problem. Now they're like way crunched down in their
Right.
couch, so even more like hyperflex forward than they normally are. So I think I've had a lot of people asking about how to modify like home office environments to be more comfortable. I hear that much more this year than I have in the past.
Yeah, we're a big fan of the standing option and the sitting option. All of our office team has the full option to either stand or sit all the time. Most of our meeting rooms are all standing height tables and desks because we see it amazingly in our profession. Like when we teach a class to like a group of people, and they sit down in an auditorium, and we're teaching a group of what would be
Sit
20
down
or
on the floor
Yeah.
in an auditorium.
Yeah, or a chair for that matter. You take a group of physical therapists that stand and walk around all day, and they're constantly moving and working with patients. You ask them to sit for more than 30 minutes. Basically, within 30 minutes, they're all up, standing up against the walls,
Yes, around the thing.
and they're kind of
Exactly
pacing
right.
around like, I can't sit. I feel myself just kind of locking up because everybody's not used to that. It's the opposite. And then we see the opposite. Then you get a student who comes into the clinic, a student that's been in school for 2 years, and they come in the clinic and they got to stand for 12 hours a day, and they're like dying.
exhausting.
Like they're like, oh my God, my legs are killing me. So
Yeah.
you really do adapt to your environment. So a couple things. There's a lot of great literature out there on this idea that if you do sit or you're in a more static position for longer periods of time, we have this idea that you can exercise and work out for 30 minutes to 60 minutes a day and somewhat offset that. And the reality is that's not true. The literature has shown quite clearly that if you're sedentary for 6 to 8 hours a day, doing 30 minutes to an hour of exercise does not offset that. So it's not that you can't do the weekend warrior thing or you can't do the 1 hour hard workout and offset that. So that goes right into another big area of research that defines what we're kind of missing as a population in the United States, that we're really missing this just daily activity. This is kind of the 10,000 steps a day phenomenon that people are constantly moving, and that constant movement requires a natural increase in heart rate, natural increase in some blood pressure, and these natural findings. And so to sit all day and then do high intensity exercise still misses this large gap, and that's really highly correlated with some of the heart disease, some of the diabetes, and some of those other health conditions that we see. And it's a very hard gap to fill in this country because of the way that we do work, the way we have done work. So it'd be interesting to see how this unfolds with the changes going on with the pandemic and such.
Right, and the HIIT training stuff, I've seen a number of people who are office worker HIIT trainer, or train, HIIT, I don't know, whatever.
Yep.
They do that, and then you see them, and they're just wrecked.
Yep.
They're just wrecked. Like, it's the same thing, 30 minutes to the 8 to 10 hours, maybe even 12 or more hours of work.
Yeah. And you know how it goes, right? Or even like a lot of times, nothing wrong with it, but except for the fact that you're injury prone. But if you sit all day and then it's like, oh my gosh, I gotta get out and go for a run. And so we go from this sitting, flex position, hips bent, shoulders forward, head forward, focus on the computer or whatever it is you're doing. And then now I'm gonna stand up and go run and not do any kind of dynamic movement or anything first. Now you're starting to stretch everything out, and everything's been wound up for 8 hours, and you're just going to go whoop, like pull on it in an instant, and you wonder why your hamstrings bother you, your knee bothers you, your hip flexor bothers you, But I think one of the big things about posture to point out that's really important, and you mentioned it a bit, Lauren, is their environment and their stimulus, or let's say lack thereof stimulus. That basically, if you think about how we move and why we move as humans, and it's really, most of it's around vision or other senses, but vision is probably the primary thing that guides movement. So for example, if there's some sort of a glance in my peripheral vision, or even a sound that's off to the side, I have to rotate my head, rotate the rest of my body, and then I have to move to address that or face that stimulus, whatever that is, right, and find out what it is. But nowadays in the work environment, in the computer environment, people can get stuck in just a tunnel vision, so to speak, for hours, for 1 to 2, 3 hours, no problem, kind of just doing the same old thing, and they're not getting stimulated with something over their shoulder to turn and rotate.
No, they're wearing noise-canceling headphones.
Right, they're getting rid of more and more.
Of course they're not going to be. They're trying to create this little bubble that they're living in.
Yeah, and then that's exactly it. Is then they end up with all the sensory systems are gone, and all they can do is this one focused thing. And that's not how we're designed to live whatsoever, much less to move, right? And so vision very much guides our patterns. So what we've talked about here, for those listening, is that when you have like a device in front of you, whether it be a phone or an iPad or a computer or a TV or whatever, your head is positioned so that your eyes are always level. So no matter what, your neck's responsibility and your shoulder's responsibility at the end of the day is to keep your eyes level. You don't ever see somebody with one eye up and one eye down, looking sideways at you. That's not a posture that anyone attains. So all of your whole body is designed around how can I keep my eyes level. So if the position I'm in is slouched forward and now there's something in front of me to see, I have to extend my head, and I end up protruding my neck forward, and I end up with this posture that ends up with a lot of tightness in the posterior neck, maybe tightness down into the arms. A lot of times you get pain to the shoulders, things of this nature, because vision is what's guiding our movement. So having other visual stimulus is my point here, outside of this computer or the screen, I think is critical to our development.
One thing also that I wanted to bring up, I just saw this on Instagram the other day as I'm scrolling through my phone, so there we go. But one thing that I've seen depicted about posture is there's the newspaper reading posture, which is identical to the cell phone.
Doesn't exist anymore either.
Yeah. Right, no it doesn't, but that's not
She was reading about it. She was reading about it on her phone.
On my phone. I'm reading about it on my phone. So yes, I'm not holding a newspaper or any of that stuff. But so I'm looking at this picture, and they're showing a group of kids leaning up against a wall, all on their phones. And then they're showing a group of men down the street, all with their newspapers. And if you look at it, the posture is really almost the same. Mm-hmm. And that's the point everyone tries to make. But I think the big difference is that you can only read to the end of the newspaper and it's done. You can scroll for endless hours on your phone, and it's highly addicting. Like, there's all these things that are popping up to catch your attention. Like, the system is designed to keep you on it.
Absolutely.
Like, they're very smart.
Yeah.
They're doing it on purpose.
Steve Jobs designed the iPhone so that children would be attracted to it.
Yeah.
So now you've got a person for life.
And then you have the blue light that's keeping you awake.
Yeah.
So you're lying in bed or whatever, doing this, sitting there forever. So, like, they're not comparable. the newspaper and the phone, they're
The
just
time,
not
right.
comparable. The posture might be, but I think the point we're getting at is duration.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like my 1-2 cents on that.
Totally.
Is it's completely different.
And to piggyback on the vision thing that Tony, you were saying a second ago, I think that is really important. That's important for us to understand because we can make recommendations based on that. I think one of the easiest or best ergonomic fixes for people is like take your screen and bring it closer to you.
Yep.
So you're no longer in this position.
Yeah.
I've had multiple people where a corrective lens, like your awesome new glasses there, is the solution for them at work, where they
Yeah.
no longer have to like crane
Right.
forward and see something. And like maybe you say maybe it's time to get your eyes checked if you can't modify this position. So maybe you can't bring the screen any closer, you get your eyes checked, corrective lens, you can all of a sudden see better. You can sit in a slightly, more upright position or something that doesn't end up in that kind of tech neck thing you were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in summary of this, and maybe some tips to move forward, if you've identified yourself as like, man, I've got to do some stuff. One thing is to move more frequently, like we said. So
Yeah.
break up the day for sure. How frequent kind of depends on what's available to you. We recommend certainly every hour that you're up moving around, go for a walk, and that's probably not enough, frankly. You really need to do, I would encourage people to do some rotation and open up their trunk a little bit, maybe do some work touching their toes, and certainly do some work extending backwards as best as possible with whatever range is available to you. Because remember that all the devices, all the screens are going to pull you forward into the slouch position. So as Evan was saying, we really want to get you back and open up that chest, open up those shoulders. So getting some movement on a regular basis would be huge. And then trying to offset this full day of whatever it is. So not full day standing, not full day sitting, but some hybrid of the two, and finding that balance for you. And maybe it's a few hours of one, a few hours of another, whatever that might be. If you can break it up with some exercise during the day to change your heart rate levels is extremely valuable. So if you're, instead of staying at a 60 to 80 beats per minute all day long, try to have something in the day that raises that heart rate up to over 100, 120 beats or so. So you're kind of getting some blood flow circulation and you're making the body change into its demands. So maybe a walk at lunchtime. Steve Jobs, again, was always a big walker. Mm-hmm. All of his meetings could do as much as he could. He tried to do it while walking. Not that he was the pinnacle of health, but...
Well, we won't touch that one.
Yeah.
So I think, and with that, what the complaint I always get from people is, well, I just get in the zone at work and I don't have time for that. It doesn't fit.
Yep.
So I have people set a timer, like on your phone, you can set a repeat timer to go off every hour or every couple hours or whatever it is,
Right.
just for them to go through something basic, whether it's walk around for 5 minutes or more, or sit there and do some rotations or extensions. But having like that cue or that new stimulus to send you back into, oh, right, I got to do this, otherwise I'm going to be really uncomfortable later. I think that's super helpful.
Yeah, we've got some great stuff on our site too. If you want to go Instagram or check out our YouTube site, we have a lot of rotational videos and things you could do easily, like at home or at the office or out and about, or even like a dynamic warm-up to kind of shake it up each day and do a little movement would be something I highly recommend for folks. So the idea is to get moving, keep moving, think more dynamically, get your body to move in different planes of motion. So there's 3 different planes. Lauren was mentioning the frontal plane, which is your ability to go side to side. Now we talked about the sagittal plane, which is your ability to go forward and backwards. And then, of course, rotation would be to be able to twist in both directions. So you want to make sure you can move in all 3 of those directions as best you can. And if you find that one's a little limited, then spend a little more time working on that. And if it's giving you trouble or you're having a tough time doing it, it's giving you pain, then that's the time to probably come in or get it evaluated by somebody to see what your limiting factor is, and then we can really address that specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only other thing that could be useful if you're working from home, it might be more doable, is sit on the floor for a while. I mean, you're going to end up with such better hip mobility, and strength if you can get up and down from the ground. So if you're in an office, I can see how maybe that's not the best or acceptable maybe in the workplace, but at home, I mean, fair game, for sure.
On that point, there are a few moments in life that are really interesting, like this idea of being on the floor, because it's so foreign to us nowadays in the culture that we're in here in the U.S. for sure. To get up and down from the floor is not something people do on a regular basis. Like I demonstrated some exercise today, so I did get on the floor a little bit, but other than that, I'm not really on the floor. I'm walking, I'm sitting, I'm laying down in my bed, right? Everything's conveniently height. But there's a few times in your life, like when you have a young baby who's on the floor crawling and moving around, that's a time you find yourself on the floor, and it's kind of an eye-opening experience. You're usually still pretty young at that time, so you kind of get through it. But then that happens again later in life as a grandparent is another big time where I've seen many, many grandparents like, I can't get to the floor, or I get down to the floor and I can't get up from the floor, playing with their grandchildren in that like 6 to 18 month phase. and it's a tall order for them. Like, so I think that's a big time that you see it come about. I know my wife and I said this, and I didn't really think much about it at the time, but it still stands out to me. So we were with, we had a dog. It was a puppy. It made it to 4 months, and then the dog passed. The kidneys didn't form completely. So, but nonetheless, the last like week or so, he wasn't doing very well. So we were going through the vet and all that stuff. He would still come home with us and all that good stuff. But we would always like sit on the ground with him and like hang out with the puppy, on the ground, play with the puppy on the ground. And then after he passed, we sat on the couch. And I was like, we haven't sat on the couch in like at least a week or two, because we spent so much time on the ground. So I think that's a great idea, is because you do feel different. It does challenge your hips in different ways, your ankles as well, which are huge things that we get stiff by not using over time. So.
And your posture in different ways, your stabilizers, because there's nothing to prop you up. So you're either prop sitting on an arm that's now like rooting ability for your upper extremity, or you're just trunk stabilizing, holding yourself up.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, those are all, we call them natural developmental pathways and patterns that you develop, and they're innate in people, but you really stop using them as you get into a modernized world, and you just have more luxuries like a phone and a chair. There's no need to get on the ground and crawl and do all these different movements. So, but keep that part of you. That's what keeps you alive. That's what really drives your function and your well-being long term. So.
Cool.
Well, thanks, Lauren.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thanks for joining. It was good to talk. You guys are watching KIMEcast. Thanks. This was KIMEcast, and we are the KIME Human Performance Institute. Thank you very much for listening. We'd love to continue the conversation with you. Please hop on our social media. It's at KIMEHPI, and engage with us there. If you'd like us to feature a topic or answer any questions live on the show, post your comments there. You can also check us out on our website at KIMEperformance.com. And there you can see links to content that we've posted throughout our podcast for more information.